Good evening, all, and welcome back to Farcical Fears. The shadow in the closet moved toward her. She couldn't scream. That's story number 4. Here are the other 9. A figure appeared on sealed basement cameras. Fresh cookies on the counter, oven cold for weeks. Dead hitchhiker, 29 years. Dashcam proved she was there. Seatbelt buckled on empty seat. Footsteps below from the vacant apartment, copying her every move. Text from inside his casket 3 days after burial. Stairwell descending to floor -17. She walked 3 hours. Father's warning, don't go in the cellar. He went anyway. Patient records scattered, all dead since 1973. Mirror reflection smiled back, but she wasn't smiling. Journal dated tomorrow, describing her own death. 10 documented encounters. Story number 4 at 35 minutes. Rated 9.1 for pure terror. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to Farcical Fears for daily true horror content that will keep you up at night. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when the darkness calls. Let's begin. Story number 1. The Night Shift Confession. Marcus Chen stood frozen in the basement corridor, flashlight shaking in his hand. The transparent figure of a doctor in a bloodied coat stood 15 feet away, completely motionless, just staring. Marcus couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The air smelled like formaldehyde and death. But what happened next changed everything. The figure's mouth opened, and words came out that weren't sounds. They were inside Marcus's head. You see me. Finally, someone sees me. Let me tell you how Marcus ended up face to face with something that shouldn't exist. Marcus Chen, 34, was a security guard who didn't believe in ghosts. He'd worked overnight shifts for 12 years. Hospitals, warehouses, abandoned buildings. He'd seen rats, homeless squatters, equipment malfunctions. Never anything supernatural. But what he didn't know was that this building had a history, a dark one. The building was a former psychiatric hospital, converted to archive storage in 1998. And the basement? That was where the experimental wing used to be. On his third night, at 2:47 a.m., Marcus noticed something on the security camera feed. Basement level. A figure moving past the camera. But the basement had been sealed for 15 years. Concrete barriers, locked doors, no access. What happened next made his blood run cold. He should have called it in. He didn't. That decision haunts him to this day. Marcus grabbed his flashlight and keys, found the old maintenance access, and descended. Every footstep echoed, except when it didn't. Sometimes, between his steps, he heard nothing. Not silence. An absence of sound, like the air itself was holding its breath. Then he found the patient records, scattered across the floor, all dated 1972, 1976. The names made him pause. Patient 847, patient 923, patient 1104. No real names, just numbers, all marked with the same notation. Procedure unsuccessful, subject expired. Over 40 files, 40 people who died in that basement. But that wasn't the worst part. His radio crackled, static. Then words formed. Patient 847. Procedure unsuccessful. Dispose of remains. Medical terminology, spoken in a monotone voice, over and over. Different patient numbers, different procedures, all ending the same way. Dispose of remains. Marcus's hands started shaking. But what came next made him question everything he thought he knew about reality. The whispers started, from every direction, reciting medical procedures in clinical detail. Frontal lobotomy without anesthesia. Electroshock therapy, voltage increased to lethal levels. Experimental medication, dosage fatal. The voices overlapped, creating a chorus of medical horror. Marcus ran deeper into the basement, trying to find the source. That's when he saw him. The doctor, standing in the old operating theater, in the exact same position Marcus would find him minutes later. Blood on his white coat, surgical mask pulled down, eyes empty. Marcus recognized him immediately, not from life, but from a documentary he'd watched about medical murderers. Dr. Edmund Voss, charged with 43 counts of murder in 1977, never convicted. Disappeared before trial. Body found in this basement in 1979, suicide by hanging. And that's how Marcus ended up frozen in that corridor, staring at something impossible. The figure's mouth opened. "You see me. Finally, someone sees me." Marcus did the only thing his body would allow. He ran. He didn't stop running until he reached his car. Quit via text message at 6 a.m. Never went back. Never collected his final paycheck. But the story doesn't end there. What Marcus learned 2 weeks later made everything so much worse. He couldn't let it go. He researched Dr. Voss, found the trial transcripts, the testimonies, the evidence. Dr. Voss had performed illegal experiments on involuntary patients, lobotomies without consent, drug trials that killed, electroshock therapy as punishment. The hospital administration knew. They covered it up for years. But what happened next changed everything Marcus thought he understood about ghosts. The patients weren't haunting that basement. Dr. Voss was. And he wasn't looking for revenge. He was looking for acknowledgement. For someone, anyone, to see what he'd done. To witness the horror he'd created. The whispers weren't threats. They were confessions. 43 confessions, spoken over and over, waiting for someone to hear them. Marcus made a decision that most people wouldn't understand. He reported everything to local authorities. The basement was excavated. 43 unmarked graves were found beneath the foundation. DNA matched missing patients from the 1970s. Families finally got closure. Proper burials were arranged. But that wasn't the end. After the burials, Marcus went back to the building one last time. The basement was empty. No whispers, no cold spots, no figure in a bloodied coat. Just silence. Real silence. Not the absence of sound, but peace. Dr. Voss got what he wanted. Someone saw, someone listened, someone acted. Marcus thought it was over. But 3 months later, something happened that proved it wasn't. He received a package. No return address. Inside, a single photograph. The basement operating theater. Empty, except for one detail. On the surgical table, written in dust. "Thank you." Marcus keeps that photograph in a locked drawer. He doesn't look at it often, because sometimes, late at night, he swears he can smell formaldehyde. And when he closes his eyes, he hears that voice. "You see me. Finally, someone sees me." Marcus doesn't work security anymore. He's a victim's advocate now, helping families of medical malpractice cases. He says it's his way of making sure what happened in that basement never happens again. But he knows the real reason. He's paying a debt to 43 people who deserved better, and to one doctor who wanted to be seen for what he truly was. A monster. Story number 2. The Homecoming. Elena Rodriguez stood in her grandmother's kitchen at 11:47 p.m., staring at a plate of fresh-baked chocolate chip cookies cooling on the counter. They were still warm. Steam rose from the edges. The smell of vanilla and brown sugar filled the air. But her grandmother had been dead for 3 days. The oven was ice cold. The house had been locked and empty since the funeral. What happened next changed everything Elena thought she understood about grief. Let me tell you how Elena ended up alone in that kitchen, questioning her sanity. Elena Rodriguez, 29, had just inherited her grandmother's house in the quiet suburbs of San Antonio. Her abuela, Rosa, had raised her after Elena's parents died in a car accident when she was 7 years old. This house held every good memory Elena had. Learning to bake in that kitchen, bedtime stories in the upstairs bedroom, summer nights on the porch swing. Rosa had died peacefully in her sleep 3 days ago at 84 years old. The funeral was small, quiet, exactly what Rosa would have wanted. Elena arrived at the house that evening to start sorting through belongings. She had the only set of keys. No one else had been inside since Rosa's body was found by her home health aide 4 days earlier. But what Elena didn't know was that her grandmother had been keeping a secret for over 60 years. A secret that was about to reveal itself in the worst possible way. Elena unlocked the front door and immediately smelled it. Her grandmother's perfume. White shoulders, the same scent Rosa had worn every single day since 1965. Elena smiled, tears in her eyes. Of course, the house would still smell like her. That made sense. Then she heard it. Footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate, moving from the bedroom toward the stairs. Elena's heart stopped. She called out, "Hello?" Silence. Just the settling of an old house, she told herself. But what came next made that explanation impossible. The footsteps continued, down the stairs, one step at a time. Elena could see the staircase from where she stood in the foyer. No one was there. But the old wooden stairs creaked under invisible weight. Step, creak, step, creak, descending toward her. Elena ran. She made it to the kitchen and grabbed a knife from the drawer, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. The footsteps stopped at the bottom of the stairs. Silence. Elena counted to 60. Nothing. She convinced herself she'd imagined it. Grief does strange things to the mind. She set the knife down and turned toward the counter. That's when she saw them. The cookies. Fresh, warm, still steaming, arranged on Rosa's favorite ceramic plate, the one with the hand-painted roses. But that wasn't the worst part. The recipe card was propped up against the plate. Rosa's handwriting, "Para mi Elena, with love." Elena should have been terrified. She should have run from that house and never looked back. But she missed her grandmother so desperately that, for one moment, she let herself believe it was a gift, a message from beyond, proof that Rosa was still with her, still taking care of her. What she didn't know was that it wasn't Rosa. Not exactly. Elena reached for a cookie. Before her fingers touched it, she heard the voice. Elena. Her grandmother's voice. But wrong. The pitch was off. The warmth was missing. It came from upstairs. "Elena, come here. I need you." That's when Elena understood something was very, very wrong. Her grandmother would never summon her like that. Rosa was patient, gentle. This voice was urgent, desperate, almost demanding. Elena grabbed her phone and backed toward the front door. "Elena, please. I've been waiting so long. I need you to find me." Find her? Rosa was buried. Elena had watched the casket lowered into the ground that morning. "Who are you?" Elena whispered. The voice changed, became sharper, younger. "I'm Rosa, Rosa's twin. I've been here since 1962. I'm still here, Elena, in the walls, in the dark. Help me, please help me." Elena's blood turned to ice. Her grandmother had never mentioned a twin sister. Never. Not once in 22 years. But what happened next proved it was true. Every photo album in the living room had been pulled from the shelf and laid open on the floor. Elena hadn't touched them. She walked closer, knife still gripped in her hand. Each album was open to the same year, 1962. The same 2 women appeared in every photo. Identical. Both with the same dark hair, same smile, same floral dresses. One was labeled Rosa in careful handwriting. The other had been scratched out with black ink. deep, violent scratches that tore through the paper. Elena's phone rang. It was her tia Carmen, Rosa's younger sister, the only other surviving family member. "Elena, are you at the house?" "Yes, and something's—" "Get out, right now. Don't ask questions. Get out and I'll explain everything." But Elena couldn't move. The footsteps started again, upstairs. Frantic now, running from room to room, drawers slamming, objects hitting the floor. The voice screamed from somewhere above. She promised she'd find me. She promised she wouldn't forget." Elena ran out the front door and didn't stop until she was in her car, doors locked, engine running. Her aunt arrived 20 minutes later. What she told Elena sitting in that driveway made everything horrifyingly clear. Rosa had a twin sister, Reina. In 1962, Reina disappeared. She was 17 years old. The police searched for weeks. Her body was never found. The case went cold. Rosa carried the guilt for 63 years, because Rosa knew what happened. On the day Reina disappeared, the twins had fought. Screaming, violent, physical. Rosa had pushed Reina. Reina fell, hit her head on the kitchen counter. Rosa panicked. She was 17, terrified of prison, terrified of destroying their family. Rosa did something unforgivable. She hid the body. The house was being renovated. There was an old well in the basement, scheduled to be filled in with concrete the next day. Rosa wrapped her sister in blankets and dropped her into that well. The contractors filled it in the following morning. No one ever knew. Rosa lived with that secret until the day she died. She never married, never had children. She raised Elena because she was desperate to atone for what she'd done. But it wasn't enough. Reina had been trapped in that house for 63 years, waiting, calling out. No one could hear her, until Rosa died. Then the barrier broke. Elena made a decision that night that most people wouldn't understand. She hired a crew to excavate the basement. It took 3 days. They broke through the concrete, removed the debris. At the bottom of that old well, they found her. Skeletal remains wrapped in rotting blankets. Reina Rodriguez, 17 years old, missing since May 1962. Elena gave her a proper burial, right next to Rosa. The funeral was small, just Elena and her aunt. They didn't tell anyone else the truth. Some secrets are too heavy to share. After the burial, Elena returned to the house one final time. The footsteps were gone. The cookies were gone. The albums were back on the shelf, neatly arranged. The house felt empty, truly empty. No perfume, no presence, no desperate voice calling for help. Reina had what she needed: acknowledgement, justice, peace. Elena sold the house 3 weeks later. She couldn't live there, not with that knowledge, but sometimes, late at night, she still smells white shoulders. Just a hint. A whisper of perfume on the air, and she wonders if it's Rosa, finally able to rest. Or if it's Reina, grateful to finally be found. Elena doesn't know. And that's what haunts her most. Story number 3. The Passenger. James Fitzgerald gripped the steering wheel so hard, his knuckles went white. The woman sitting in his passenger seat hadn't blinked once in 43 minutes. Not once. She stared straight ahead through the windshield, occasionally giving him directions in a flat, emotionless voice. Her skin looked pale, almost translucent in the dashboard lights. When she finally spoke again, her voice was different, hollow. "Turn here. That's where I need to go." James pulled onto the shoulder of the empty highway. She pointed to a burned wreckage in the field, twisted metal barely visible in the darkness. "That's where I've been trying to get to for 30 years. What happened next changed everything James thought he knew about the road he'd been driving for 20 years. Let me tell you how James ended up with a dead woman in his truck. James Fitzgerald, 41, was a long-haul truck driver who'd been crossing the country for 2 decades. He'd driven through every state, every kind of weather, every time of day and night. He knew the highways better than he knew his own neighborhood. Interstate 40 through New Mexico was one of his regular routes. Straight, empty, predictable. He'd made this drive hundreds of times. But what he didn't know was that this particular stretch of highway had a reputation. Locals wouldn't drive it at night. They had stories. James had heard them at truck stops. Ghost hitchhikers, phantom cars, lights that followed you for miles, then vanished. He'd always laughed them off. Superstition, boredom, people seeing things that weren't there. On October 14, 2023, James was making his usual run from Albuquerque to Amarillo. It was 11:34 p.m. No moon, just darkness and his headlights cutting through the desert. That's when he saw her. A woman standing on the shoulder of the road, thumb out, small overnight bag at her feet. She looked young, maybe mid-20s, wearing jeans and a light blue jacket. James normally didn't pick up hitchhikers. Company policy, insurance liability. But something about her made him slow down. She looked desperate, lost. He pulled over. What happened next should have been his first warning. She opened the door before he even came to a complete stop, climbed in without a word, set her bag on the floor, buckled her seatbelt, then looked straight ahead and said, "Thank you. I need to get to exit 89. James pulled back onto the highway. "You okay? Car trouble?" She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was strange, too flat, no emotion. "My car broke down about 5 miles back. I've been trying to get home." James nodded, made small talk, asked her name. She said Diane, asked where she was from. Tucumcari. That was about 40 miles ahead. Made sense. But what didn't make sense was the cold. The temperature inside the cab dropped at least 15 degrees. James could see his breath. He cranked the heat. It didn't help. Diane didn't seem to notice. She just stared. Straight ahead, hands folded in her lap. The conversation got stranger. Diane talked about visiting her mother. But the details were wrong. She mentioned landmarks that didn't exist anymore. A diner that had closed in 1998. A gas station that was now a vacant lot. James started to feel uneasy. He glanced at her several times. That's when he noticed. She never blinked, not once. Her chest didn't move. She wasn't breathing. James's heart started pounding. He told himself he was being paranoid, tired, seeing things. But what came next made that impossible to believe. They passed mile marker 85, 4 miles from exit 89. Diane suddenly turned and looked directly at him. Her eyes were completely black. No whites, no iris, just endless black. "I'm almost home," she said. But her mouth didn't move. James slammed on the brakes. The truck skidded to a stop on the shoulder. He turned to her, ready to demand answers, ready to tell her to get out. But she was already pointing out the window. "There. That's where I need to go." James looked. In the field, about 100 yards from the highway, was the charred skeleton of a vehicle. Old, rusted, grass growing through the windows. Police tape, faded and torn, still fluttered from one of the mirrors. Diane unbuckled her seatbelt. "Thank you for finally stopping." She opened the door, got out, took 3 steps toward that wreckage, then vanished. Not walked away. Vanished. 1 second she was there, the next she was gone. The passenger door stood open. Cold wind rushed in, but Diane was gone. James sat there for 10 minutes, trying to process what he'd just seen. Then he did what any rational person would do. He checked the passenger seat. Empty. No bag on the floor, no indentation in the seat, no wet marks from her shoes. Nothing. But the seatbelt was still buckled, pulled tight across the empty seat. James unbuckled it with shaking hands. That's when he noticed something else. The dash cam. He had a dash cam that recorded everything. James pulled over at the next rest stop and reviewed the footage. What he saw on that screen broke his understanding of reality. The footage showed James pulling over at 11:34 p.m., showed the passenger door opening, but no one got in. The door closed by itself. The seatbelt buckled itself. For 43 minutes, the camera showed James talking to an empty seat, turning occasionally to look at nothing, finally pulling over and staring at an empty passenger seat. The door opened. The seatbelt unbuckled. The door closed, all by itself. James couldn't accept it. He drove to the nearest sheriff's station, showed them the footage, told them about the woman, about the wreckage in the field. The deputy's face went pale. Exit 89? Yeah, why? The deputy pulled up a file on his computer, showed James a photo. It was her, Diane Morrison, age 23. Killed in a single vehicle accident on October 14, 1994. 29 years ago to the day, the accident report said her car had run off the road at high speed, rolled 4 times, and burst into flames. Diane was thrown from the vehicle. Witnesses, truckers passing by, reported seeing a young woman walking toward the highway, trying to flag down cars. But when they stopped, she was gone. They found her body in the morning, 50 feet from the road. The coroner said she died on impact, couldn't have walked anywhere. But dozens of reports over the years said the same thing. A young woman in a blue jacket, hitchhiking on that exact stretch of highway, always on October 14th, always asking to go to exit 89, always disappearing when they got there. James learned that Diane had been on her way home to visit her mother. Her mother had been sick, dying. Diane was rushing, speeding, trying to get there in time. She never made it. Her mother died 3 days later without knowing what happened to her daughter. The theory was that Diane was trapped in her final moments, reliving the drive home over and over, trying to complete the journey she never finished, using the living as vessels to finally get there. James returned to that spot a week later. During the day, the wreckage was still there, barely recognizable as a vehicle after 30 years of exposure. The police had never removed it. Too remote, too much effort, nothing to preserve. It had just been left to rot. James walked out to it, found remnants of blue fabric snagged on twisted metal, a faded air freshener still hanging from what used to be a rearview mirror, and on the driver's seat, barely visible under decades of rust and decay, a small overnight bag. Blue. Faded. The same bag Diane had been carrying when she got into his truck. James left it there. He didn't touch it. Some things aren't meant to be disturbed. James quit long-haul trucking 2 months later, sold his truck, moved to Oregon, got a job doing local deliveries, home every night. He doesn't drive at night anymore, won't even consider it. But what haunts him most isn't the experience itself. It's what he realized later. The dashcam footage showed the seatbelt buckled across an empty seat for 43 minutes. Which means, for 43 minutes, something was sitting there. Something with enough physical presence to buckle a seatbelt. Something that could open and close a door. Something that could make the seat compress under its weight. The camera couldn't see her, but she was there. And if she was there, if she was that solid, that real, then what else is out there that we can't see? What else is sitting next to us in the dark, invisible, waiting, James checked the dashcam footage one more time before he sold the truck. He wanted to delete it, erase all evidence. But something stopped him. He watched it through one final time. And at the very end, just before the passenger door closed, he saw something he'd missed before. For exactly 3 frames, less than 1/10 of a second, the camera caught her. A translucent figure in a blue jacket, one hand on the door handle, looking directly at the camera, looking directly at James. Her mouth moved. The audio was silent, but James could read her lips. "Thank you." Then she was gone. James keeps a photo of Diane Morrison in his wallet, the one from her obituary. He doesn't know why. Maybe it's guilt for being afraid of her. Maybe it's respect for a soul that's been trying to get home for 3 decades. Or maybe it's a reminder that the road is full of things we can't see, things that need help, things that are just trying to finish the journey they started so long ago. Story number 4. The apartment below. Priya Mehta stood at the closet door in the vacant apartment below hers, watching the shadow inside move. The door was only open 6 inches, just enough to see something tall and dark shift its weight from side to side, breathing with a wet, rattling sound. The landlord's hand gripped her shoulder so hard it hurt. "Don't open it wider," he whispered. "For the love of God, don't open it wider." But Priya's hand was already on the doorknob. What happened next changed everything she thought she understood about the building she'd been living in for 3 months. Let me tell you how Priya ended up staring into that closet, paralyzed with fear. Priya Mehta, 26, had just graduated from college and landed her first real job as a graphic designer in downtown Seattle. The apartment was perfect. 2nd floor of a converted Victorian house, hardwood floors, big windows, affordable rent. The landlord, Gerald Brennan, was an older man in his 70s who lived in the house next door and managed the property. He seemed kind, grandfatherly, maybe a little nervous. During the walkthrough, he'd mentioned that the 1st floor apartment had been vacant for several months. "Renovations," he'd said vaguely. Priya hadn't thought anything of it. Cheaper rent for her meant fewer neighbors to deal with. The first 2 weeks were quiet. Priya settled in, decorated, got into her routine. She worked from home most days, which meant the building was silent except for her. No footsteps, no voices, no signs of life from the apartment below. Perfect. Then, on her 15th night in the apartment, at exactly 3:17 a.m., she heard it. Footsteps, directly below her bedroom, slow, methodical, walking from what would be the bedroom to the kitchen, then stopping. Silence. Priya lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to rationalize it. Old building, pipes, wood settling. But what came next made those explanations impossible. A knock. 3 deliberate knocks, on her floor, from below. Priya sat up, heart pounding. The knocking came again. 3 knocks, same spot, right below where her bed was positioned. She grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and crept to the floor. She knelt down, listening. Nothing. Complete silence. She convinced herself she'd been dreaming. Went back to bed. But the next night, at 3:17 a.m., it happened again. Footsteps. The exact same pattern. Bedroom to kitchen. Stop. 3 knocks on the floor. Priya recorded it on her phone this time. Played it back the next morning to make sure she wasn't losing her mind. The recording was clear. Footsteps. Distinct. Deliberate. Coming from the vacant apartment below. That morning, Priya went downstairs and knocked on the 1st floor apartment door. No answer. She tried the doorknob. Locked. She peered through the windows. The curtains were drawn, but she could see through a gap. Empty. Completely empty. Dusty. No furniture. No signs of renovation work. No signs of anyone being there at all. She called Gerald. The apartment below mine. Has anyone been staying there? His voice changed immediately. Got tight, defensive. No. Why? I'm hearing footsteps at night and knocking. Long pause. Old building. Pipes. It's not pipes. Another pause. I'll look into it. He hung up. That should have been Priya's warning to leave. The footsteps continued. Every night. 3:17 a.m. Same pattern. But they started changing. They began to mirror Priya's movements during the day. When she walked from her bedroom to her kitchen, she'd hear steps below doing the same. When she stopped, they stopped. When she moved, they moved. It was like something was learning her routine, mapping her movements. One night, Priya decided to test it. At 2 a.m., before the usual 3:17 disturbance, she walked to her kitchen. Waited. Within seconds, footsteps below mirrored her path. She walked back to the bedroom. The footsteps followed. She froze in the hallway. The footsteps below stopped directly beneath her. Then came the knocking. Not 3 knocks this time. Dozens. Rapid. Frantic. Like something trying to break through the floor. Priya called Gerald at 2:30 a.m., screaming into the phone. Someone is in that apartment. I don't care what you say. Someone is down there and they're following me. Gerald arrived 20 minutes later, visibly shaken, holding a key ring. I'll open it. I'll show you. No one is there. They went to the first-floor apartment. Gerald's hands were shaking so badly he could barely get the key in the lock. When the door finally opened, cold air rushed out. The smell hit them immediately. Rot, mildew, something old and wrong. Gerald flipped the light switch. Nothing happened. Priya used her phone flashlight. The apartment was exactly as she'd seen through the window. Empty, dusty. But there were fresh footprints in the dust, leading from the bedroom area to the kitchen, then back to the bedroom, then stopping at the closet. Priya walked toward the closet, phone light cutting through the darkness. Gerald grabbed her arm. Don't. But she pulled free. She had to know. She had to see. The footprints led right to the closet door. It was slightly open, maybe 6 inches, just enough to see inside. Priya aimed her light at the gap. That's when she saw it. The shadow. Tall. Too tall to be human, standing inside the closet, pressed against the back wall. It didn't have a distinct shape, just darkness that was somehow darker than the surrounding space. And it was moving, shifting, breathing with that wet, rattling sound. Priya's hand moved toward the doorknob. Gerald screamed, "Don't open it!" But her fingers were already closing around the handle. What happened next lasted only 3 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Priya pulled the door open another 2 inches. The shadow surged forward, hitting the door from the inside with enough force to slam it shut. The sound was deafening. The entire apartment shook. Priya stumbled, backward, dropping her phone. Gerald grabbed her and pulled her toward the exit. They made it to the hallway before the knocking started again. Not from the floor this time, from inside the closet. Dozens of hands pounding from the inside. The sound was wrong. Too many knocks happening simultaneously, overlapping, creating a horrific percussion that echoed through the empty apartment. Gerald slammed the door shut, locked it, and dragged Priya outside. They stood on the sidewalk, both breathing hard, staring up at the building. "What the hell was that?" Priya demanded. Gerald finally broke. "I need to tell you something." The previous tenant, a man named David Chen, had lived in Priya's apartment for 2 years. Quiet guy, kept to himself. But during his last month, He'd started complaining about the same thing. Footsteps below, knocking. He'd demanded Gerald investigate. Gerald had refused, told him it was just old building noises. David became obsessed, started staying awake all night, recording the sounds, documenting the patterns. He claimed something was mimicking him, following him, learning from him. One night, David broke into the first-floor apartment himself. Gerald found him the next morning. David was catatonic, curled up in the corner of the empty apartment, staring at the closet. He never spoke again. He was institutionalized. Still there today. When police searched the apartment, they found scratch marks inside the closet. Deep gouges in the wood, made from the inside. But that wasn't the worst part. Gerald did some research after David's breakdown. The building was constructed in 1924. The first-floor apartment had originally been used as a medical office. The closet? That was where the doctor stored bodies. He was performing illegal abortions, and when patients died, he'd hide them there until he could dispose of them. Over a dozen women died in that apartment between 1924 and 1931. When the doctor was finally caught, he hanged himself in that closet before police could arrest him. The bodies were removed. The apartment was renovated. But tenants kept reporting the same thing. Footsteps, knocking, shadows in the closet. The longest anyone had stayed in the building was 8 months before the activity drove them out. Priya moved out the next day. Didn't pack properly, didn't give notice, just threw everything in her car and left. Gerald didn't charge her for breaking the lease. He just looked relieved that she was leaving without demanding answers or threatening legal action. The building was listed for rent again within a week. New tenant moved into Priya's second-floor apartment 2 months later. A young man, fresh out of grad school. Priya found his social media profile and sent him a message. Warned him, told him everything. He replied, "Thanks for the concern, but I don't believe in ghosts. The rent's too good to pass up." That was 6 weeks ago. Last week, Priya checked his profile again. He'd posted a single update at 3:42 a.m. I hear it too, every night. It knows where I am. Then nothing. His profile went silent. No new posts, no responses to comments, nothing. Priya has nightmares now. Not about what she saw in the closet, but about what she didn't see. Because when that door opened those extra 2 inches, when the shadow surged forward, she caught a glimpse of something that her brain refuses to fully process. It wasn't one figure. It was dozens, crammed into that small closet. Bodies pressed together, faces, so many faces, all staring at her, all with mouths open in silent screams. And in the very back, hanging from a rope, was the doctor. Still there after all these years, still waiting, still calling to the people above him, mimicking their footsteps, learning their patterns, trying to lure them down, trying to make them open the closet door. Because once you open it all the way, once you step inside, you become part of the collection, part of the shadows, trapped forever in that tiny, dark space. Priya drives past the building sometimes, even though she knows she shouldn't. The second-floor apartment is dark now. No lights, no signs of life. There's a "for rent" sign in the window again. The building always needs new tenants, because no one ever stays long enough to call it home. Story number 5. The Last Message. Derek Nguyen's phone vibrated at 3:47 a.m. with a text message from his best friend Tyler. The message was simple. Check the crime scene photos again. Look under the driver's seat of the other car. Derek stared at the screen, his entire body going cold. Tyler had been dead for 6 days. The funeral was 4 days ago. Derek had watched them lower the casket into the ground. But what came next changed everything Derek thought he understood about death, friendship, and justice. Let me tell you how Derek ended up receiving text messages from beyond the grave. Derek Nguyen, 33, was a software engineer living in Portland, Oregon. His best friend, Tyler Brennan, was the person he was closest to in the world. They'd met in college, been roommates for 7 years, stood at each other's weddings. Tyler was the brother Derek never had. They texted every single day without fail. Stupid memes, work complaints, random observations, deep conversations at 2 a.m. Their text thread went back 11 years and contained over 50,000 messages. It was a complete archive of their friendship. Then, on September 12, 2024, Tyler died in a car accident on Highway 26. The police said it was straightforward. Tyler's car had been hit by another vehicle that ran a red light. The impact was catastrophic. Tyler was killed instantly. The other driver fled the scene but was caught 3 hours later. A 19-year-old kid, drunk, panicked, open and shut case. Tyler's wife, Jennifer, was destroyed. Derek helped plan the funeral, wrote the eulogy, held Jennifer while she sobbed. The funeral was on September 14th. Small, intimate. Tyler would have hated a big production. Derek stood at the graveside and watched them lower his best friend into the ground. He thought that was the end. He was wrong. On September 15th, at 11:34 p.m., Derek's phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. "I'm still here." Derek stared at the screen for a full minute, not breathing. His first thought was that Jennifer had Tyler's phone, maybe going through his messages, accidentally sent something. He texted back, "Jennifer?" The response came immediately. "No, it's me, Tyler. I'm still here. Only you can see these." Derek's hands started shaking. This wasn't possible. Someone was playing a sick joke. He called Tyler's number. It went straight to voicemail. Tyler's voice. "Hey, it's Tyler. Leave a message." Derek hung up. Texted again. "Who is this?" The response. "It's me, man. I know this is impossible, but it's me." Derek didn't sleep that night. He convinced himself it was a hacker, someone who'd gotten access to Tyler's phone somehow, someone cruel enough to torment a grieving friend. But what came next made that explanation fall apart. The next message arrived at 6:47 a.m. "Remember the camping trip in 2019? When we got lost and you were convinced we were going to die? You made me promise that if anything ever happened to either of us, we'd find a way to let the other one know we were okay. I'm keeping that promise." Derek felt his stomach drop. No one knew about that conversation. It had been just the two of them, alone in a tent, drunk and philosophical. They'd never told anyone. Not their wives. Not their other friends. No one. Derek texted back, "If this is really you, prove it." The response came 30 seconds later. "Your password for everything is KM1987 in arrear. You use the same one for your bank, your email, your work laptop. I've told you 1,000 times to change it, but you never do. You have a scar on your left shoulder from when you fell off your bike when you were 9. You told everyone it was from a skateboarding accident because you thought that sounded cooler. You cried at our wedding, both of them. You tried to hide it, but I saw. You're terrified of becoming like your dad. You check your temper constantly because of it. Should I keep going?" Derek dropped his phone. His vision blurred. This was impossible. Completely impossible. But it was also undeniably Tyler. The messages continued over the next 3 days. Tyler would text at random times, usually late at night or early morning. The conversations were normal. Too normal. Tyler asking how Jennifer was holding up, making jokes, reminiscing about old memories, giving Derek advice about a work problem he'd been dealing with. It felt like Tyler had never died, like they were just texting like they always had. Derek started to accept it. Maybe this was real. Maybe death wasn't the end. Maybe his best friend had found a way to stay connected. But what happened next shattered that fragile hope and revealed something far darker. On September 18th, Tyler's messages changed tone. Derek, I need you to do something for me. I need you to look at the accident report, the police report. Something's wrong. Derek had access to the report through Jennifer. He pulled it up, read through it. What am I looking for? Tyler's response. The other car, the one that hit me. Look at the description. Derek found it. A white Honda Civic. License plate documented. Driver arrested. I see it. What about it? Tyler, that's not the car that hit me. That kid didn't kill me. Someone else did. And they're going to get away with it unless you help me. Derek felt the world tilt. What are you talking about? Tyler's response took 3 minutes to arrive. When it did, it was long, detailed, terrifying. The car that hit me was a black SUV. Escalade, maybe a Suburban. Tinted windows. It ran the light going at least 70 miles an hour. Hit me on the driver's side. I remember the impact. I remember seeing the driver. Male, white, 40s. He looked directly at me before he hit me. It wasn't an accident, Derek. It was intentional. After the impact, I was thrown from the car. I was on the ground. I could see everything, but I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. The SUV stopped. The driver got out. Checked to make sure I was dead. Then he left. 2 minutes later, the white Honda showed up. That drunk kid. He saw my car, panicked, drove away. The SUV driver called it in anonymously. Made sure the kid would be blamed. Perfect setup. Derek read the message 3 times. This couldn't be real. But then Tyler sent another message. Go to the accident site. You'll find evidence. Skid marks from 2 different vehicles. The police missed it because they already had a suspect. Check under the driver's seat of the SUV if you can find it. You'll find proof. Derek didn't know what to do. This was insane. He was receiving detailed instructions from a dead man about a possible murder conspiracy. He should ignore it. Let the police handle it. Let Tyler rest. But what came next made ignoring it impossible. Tyler sent a photo. Derek opened it. His blood turned to ice. The photo showed Tyler's funeral, taken from inside the casket, looking up at the closed lid. The angle was impossible. The perspective was wrong. But it was real. Derek could see the satin lining, the flowers placed on top. The photo's metadata showed it was taken on September 14th at 2:17 p.m. during the funeral service. Derek couldn't breathe. He called Jennifer, asked if anyone had taken photos inside the casket before it was closed. She said no. Absolutely not. That would be grotesque. Derek hung up. Texted Tyler, "How did you send that photo?" Tyler's response, "I don't know how any of this works. I just know I can see things, know things, and I need you to trust me. Please, don't let them get away with this." Derek made a decision that would change everything. He went to the accident site. It was 2:30 a.m. He brought a flashlight, examined the road, found what Tyler said he would. 2 sets of skid marks, different tire widths, different angles. The police had only documented 1 set. Derek took photos, then he did something crazy. He filed a tip with the police, anonymous, included the photos, mentioned a possible second vehicle. The police reopened the investigation. It took them 4 days. They found traffic camera footage from 2 blocks away that had been overlooked. The footage showed a black Escalade running the red light, striking Tyler's car, then fleeing. The white Honda appeared 90 seconds later. The police traced the Escalade, registered to a man named Michael Voss. 43 years old. No prior record. When they brought him in for questioning, he had an alibi. He was at a business dinner, 4 witnesses. But Derek received another message from Tyler. Check his business partner, guy named Harris. They had a deal go bad. Tyler, my company, had filed a lawsuit against them for fraud. $3 million. I was the lead plaintiff. Check the court records. Derek forwarded the information to the detective handling the case. At first they thought he was a crackpot, but they checked anyway. The records confirmed everything. Tyler's tech startup had discovered that Voss and his partner, Robert Harris, had been embezzling funds through a shell company. The lawsuit was scheduled for trial on October 1st. If Tyler testified, Voss and Harris would have lost everything. Prison time, financial ruin, career destruction. The detective brought Harris in for questioning. Under pressure, Harris broke. Confessed everything. Voss had hired him to kill Tyler, make it look like an accident. Harris stole the Escalade, followed Tyler from his office, waited for the right moment, then struck. The white Honda showing up was pure luck. They let the kid take the fall. But what they didn't count on was Tyler finding a way to speak from beyond death. Voss and Harris were arrested on October 3rd, both charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, evidence tampering. The trial is still ongoing. The drunk kid in the Honda was released, all charges dropped. His life was destroyed, but at least he wasn't going to prison for a crime he didn't commit. And Derek? Derek received one final message from Tyler on October 4th at 9:15 p.m. Thank you. I can rest now. Tell Jennifer I love her. Tell her I'm okay. And Derek, thank you for believing me. Thank you for not thinking you were crazy. I love you, brother. Derek texted back, I love you too. Rest easy. He waited for a response. Nothing came. He checked his phone every hour for the next 3 days. Silence. Tyler's number was disconnected on October 7th, officially deactivated by the phone company. Tyler was truly gone this time. Derek keeps the text thread saved, backed up in 3 different places. He's shown it to Jennifer. She doesn't know what to believe. Part of her thinks Derek fabricated it as a coping mechanism. Part of her desperately wants it to be real. Derek doesn't try to convince her either way. He knows what happened. He knows his best friend reached out from death to deliver justice, to make sure his killers didn't win, to keep a promise made in a tent in 2019. Some people would say it's impossible, that Derek experienced a grief-induced break from reality, and the evidence was always there. He just needed the psychological push to look for it. Maybe that's true. Maybe Derek's mind created the texts to give himself permission to investigate. But that doesn't explain the photo, the one taken from inside the casket. Derek had it analyzed by a digital forensics expert. The expert said it wasn't doctored, wasn't photoshopped. It was a genuine photo taken from that exact location at that exact time. There's no rational explanation for how that photo exists. Derek doesn't sleep well anymore. Not because he's scared, but because sometimes, late at night, his phone will vibrate. He'll check it, hoping for a message. But it's always just a notification, an email, a spam text. Never Tyler. But Derek keeps the phone charged, keeps the volume on, keeps Tyler's contacts saved. Because maybe, someday, if something else happens, if there's something else Tyler needs him to know, the phone will buzz again, and Derek will be ready. He'll answer, he'll listen, he'll believe. Because that's what best friends do. Even when one of them is calling from the other side of death. Story number 6. The Stairwell. Olivia Park stood on a landing marked 24 in a stairwell that should only go down 14 floors. She'd been descending for what felt like 30 minutes, and the stairs just kept going. Down, down, down. The temperature had dropped to near freezing. Her breath came out in thick clouds, and worst of all, she could hear something above her. Footsteps. Fast. Getting closer. Whatever was chasing her was impossibly tall. She could see its shadow stretching down the stairwell, limbs too long, proportions all wrong. The door at landing 24 was her only option. She reached for the handle. What happened next changed everything Olivia thought she understood about the building she'd worked in for 6 years. Let me tell you how Olivia ended up trapped in an impossible space that shouldn't exist. Olivia Park, 38, was a corporate executive at a marketing firm in downtown Chicago. Her office was on the 14th floor of the Morrison Building, a glass and steel structure built in 1987. She'd worked there for 6 years, knew every floor, every hallway, every elevator quirk. It was her second home. She often worked late, stayed until 9 or 10 p.m. when she had presentations or reports due. The building was quiet after hours, security guards at the desk, cleaning crew making rounds, otherwise empty. Olivia liked it that way. Fewer distractions, more focus. On November 7th, 2024, she was working late on a campaign pitch. Lost track of time. Looked up at 11:43 p.m. The last elevator ran at midnight, and the guard would lock the building at 12:15 a.m. She needed to leave. Olivia packed her laptop, grabbed her coat, and headed for the elevator. Pressed the button. Waited. The elevator display showed it was stuck on the 3rd floor. She pressed again. Nothing. It wasn't moving. She checked her phone. 11:47 p.m. She didn't have time to wait. The emergency stairwell was her only option. She'd used it before during fire drills. 14 floors, 5 minutes. No problem. But what Olivia didn't know was that the stairwell had a reputation. Maintenance workers avoided it after dark. Security guards refused to patrol it during night shifts. 2 janitors had quit after experiencing something they wouldn't talk about. The building manager had filed multiple complaints with the city about structural anomalies that inspectors could never find. But no one ever told Olivia. She had no reason to be afraid. She pushed open the stairwell door on the 14th floor. The air inside was different, colder, denser. The fluorescent lights flickered. The walls were concrete, painted industrial gray. Her footsteps echoed. She started descending. Floor 13, floor 12. Normal. Nothing unusual. Floor 11. The lights flickered again, longer this time. Floor 10. The temperature dropped noticeably. Olivia pulled her coat tighter. Floor 9. The echo of her footsteps sounded wrong, like there were 2 sets of footsteps instead of 1. Olivia stopped. The echo continued for 2 more steps, then stopped. She looked up and down the stairwell. Empty. Just concrete and shadows. She kept going. Floor 8, floor 7, floor 6. The lights went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, dim red bulbs that cast everything in crimson. Floor 5. Olivia felt a pressure change, like her ears needed to pop. Floor 4, 3, 2, 1, ground floor. She reached for the exit door, pulled. It wouldn't open, locked from the outside. Panic started to creep in. Olivia pulled her phone out. No signal. That made sense. Concrete stairwell, thick walls, signal blockage. She'd have to go back up and try the elevators again. But something stopped her. A sound from above. Footsteps. Someone else was in the stairwell. Coming down. Fast. Relief flooded through her. Security guard, maybe. Someone who could let her out. "Hello?" she called up. No response. The footsteps continued, faster. She could hear them echoing, getting closer. "I'm locked in," she called. "Can you help?" Silence. Then the footsteps stopped. Complete silence. Olivia waited, staring up the stairwell. Nothing. "Hello?" her voice echoed back. Then she heard it. Breathing, heavy, wet, rattling, like someone with fluid in their lungs. It was coming from above, but she couldn't see anyone. The emergency lights flickered. When they came back, Olivia saw it. A shadow. At the top of the visible stairwell, maybe 3 floors up. But the shadow was wrong. Too tall, at least 7 or 8 feet. The arms were too long. They reached past where the knees should be. The head was elongated, and it was looking down at her. Olivia's blood turned to ice. This wasn't a person. This wasn't a security guard. This was something else. The shadow moved, started descending. Slow, deliberate. Each footstep echoed like a gunshot. Olivia tried the door again, pulled with all her strength. It wouldn't budge. The shadow was getting closer. She could see it more clearly now. It wasn't casting a shadow, it was a shadow. A void in the shape of something vaguely human. Olivia did the only thing she could. She went down, below the ground floor. The stairwell continued. She didn't know that. She'd always assumed it ended at ground level. But there were more stairs, going down. She took them. Landing marked B1 for basement 1. The door was locked. She kept going. B2? Locked. B3? The lights were dimmer here. The walls were older. The paint was peeling. This part of the stairwell looked abandoned, like it hadn't been maintained in decades. But what came next made no sense at all. The landing after B3 wasn't marked B4. It was marked 1. -1. Olivia stared at the sign, her brain trying to process it. She looked up. The shadow was still following. 3 flights above her, moving faster now. She continued down. 2. 3. The temperature kept dropping. Her fingers were numb. She could see her breath. The emergency lights were barely working. 5. 7. 10. This was impossible. She'd descended more than 20 floors. The building was only 14 stories tall. There couldn't be 10 basement levels. It defied physics, defied logic. But the stairs kept going, and the shadow kept following. 13. 17. 21. Olivia's legs burned. Her lungs screamed. She tried the doors at every landing, all locked, every single one. She was trapped in a descending spiral with something inhuman hunting her. Finally, at 24, the stairs ended. No more down. Just a landing and a door. The shadow was 2 flights above her now. She could hear it breathing, that wet, rattling sound. The lights flickered. In the brief moment of darkness, she heard it speak. Not with words, but with a sound that formed itself into meaning inside her head. "Stop running." Olivia's hands shook as she grabbed the door handle at 24. "Please open, please." She turned the handle. It moved. The door swung open. Light poured out, bright, warm. Olivia stumbled through and slammed the door behind her. She was in a hallway, carpeted, well lit, clean, normal. She looked around, disoriented. This was impossible. She recognized this hallway. It was the 14th floor. Her floor, the same hallway she'd left from. She could see her office door at the end. The elevator was right there. The display showed 11:58 p.m. She'd only been gone 11 minutes. Olivia walked to her office in a daze. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. Her laptop, her coffee cup, her coat draped over the chair. But she was wearing her coat. She looked down. The coat was on her. She looked at the chair. A different coat, her winter coat, the one she kept in her office closet. She never wore that one. She checked her phone. 11:58 p.m. No missed time, no signal. She pulled up the building directory. The Morrison building had 14 floors above ground and 2 basement levels for parking. That was it. No sub-basements, no negative floors. She was losing her mind. She had to be. She walked to the elevator, pressed the button. The doors opened immediately. She got in, pressed G for ground level. The elevator descended, smooth, normal. Ding. Ground floor. The doors opened. The security guard at the desk looked up. "Heading out, Ms. Park?" "Yeah," Olivia said. Her voice sounded strange. "Have a good night." She walked out into the Chicago night. Cold, clear, real. Olivia went to work the next day, took the elevator, avoided the stairwell, didn't mention what happened. Who would believe her? But she needed to know. During lunch, she went to the building manager's office, asked about the stairwells. "We have 2 emergency stairwells," the manager said, east and west. "Do they go below ground? To B2, parking levels? Nothing below that?" The manager looked at her strangely. "No. Why?" Olivia made up an excuse about a fire drill question. Left. But she couldn't let it go. She researched the Morrison building, found construction records, blueprints. The building was constructed on the site of an older building that had been demolished in 1985. That building had been a hospital, built in 1923. The hospital had sublevels, morgue, storage, tunnels connecting to other buildings. When it was demolished, most of the substructure was left in place, filled with concrete, sealed. But stairwells are strange things. Sometimes they don't get filled properly. Sometimes they're forgotten. 2 weeks later, Olivia saw a news report. A janitor had been found unconscious in the West Emergency stairwell. He was disoriented, hypothermic, and kept repeating the same thing. "I went down too far. I couldn't stop. It followed me." He was hospitalized for psychological evaluation, never came back to work. Olivia knew exactly what he'd experienced. She requested to review building security footage from November 7th. The company complied. They trusted her. She watched the timestamp. 11:47 p.m. The 14th floor hallway camera showed Olivia entering the stairwell. Then nothing. For 3 hours and 7 minutes, no camera in the building captured her. Not the stairwell cameras, not the ground floor. Nothing. At 2:54 a.m., the 14th floor camera showed Olivia exiting the stairwell. She looked exhausted, terrified. She walked to her office. 5 minutes later, the same camera showed Olivia leaving her office and walking to the elevator. This was the Olivia she remembered being, the one who left at 11:58 p.m. But the footage proved something impossible. 2 Olivias. One who entered the stairwell at 11:47 and didn't emerge for 3 hours. One who exited the stairwell, went to her office, then left normally at 11:58. Both existed simultaneously. For those 11 minutes, there were 2 versions of Olivia Park in the building. The building manager called her into his office the next day. He'd reviewed the footage too. "I need to show you something," he said. He pulled up maintenance records. Complaints about the west stairwell dated back to 1989. 2 years after the building opened, workers reported time distortions, feeling watched, hearing footsteps when no one else was there. 3 people reported descending below ground floor and finding levels that didn't exist on the blueprints. All 3 were dismissed as experiencing stress or fatigue. No investigation was conducted. "I should have told you," the manager said. "I should have told everyone." But how do you explain something like that? How do you tell people the building is haunted by impossible geometry? Olivia didn't have an answer. She handed in her resignation 2 days later. Didn't explain why. Just said she'd found another opportunity. Her last day was December 1st. She never went near the west stairwell again. Olivia doesn't work in high-rise buildings anymore. She took a job at a single-story office park. No elevators, no stairwells, just parking lot to front door. Her friends think she's crazy. Executives don't take lower positions at smaller companies. But Olivia doesn't care. She knows what's down there, below the ground, in the spaces that shouldn't exist. And she knows what chases people who find those spaces. She still has nightmares. She's descending stairs that never end, breathing that wet, rattling sound getting closer, a shadow with limbs too long reaching for her. And always, always, she hears that voice. Stop running. Because here's what Olivia finally understood. To whatever exists in that stairwell, time doesn't work the same way. Those 3 hours she was missing? To her, it was 11 minutes. But somewhere, in some version of that stairwell, a version of Olivia is still descending, still running, still trying to reach a door that will let her out. And she'll be running forever. Because once you enter that space, once you descend past where reality ends, part of you never leaves. You're trapped in an eternal loop, forever falling through impossible floors in a building that exists in the spaces between what is and what cannot be. Story number 7. The Inheritance. Samuel Ashford stood in the cellar of his father's estate, staring at a woman in the mirror who shouldn't exist. She was young, maybe 25, with long dark hair and eyes that burned with rage. His reflection stood beside her in the glass, but when Samuel looked to his right, no one was there. The woman in the mirror smiled. Her lips moved, forming words that echoed not through the air, but directly into Samuel's mind. Your father paid his debt. Now it's your turn. What happened next changed everything Samuel thought he understood about his family, their fortune, and the curse that had haunted them for over a century. Let me tell you how Samuel ended up face to face with something his family had been hiding for 4 generations. Samuel Ashford, 45, hadn't spoken to his father in 20 years. The estrangement started when Samuel was 25, after discovering his father's true nature. Controlling, manipulative, cruel, in ways both subtle and overt. Samuel had walked away from the family money, built his own modest life as a high school history teacher in Vermont. When the call came that his father, Richard Ashford, had died alone in the family estate in rural Massachusetts, Samuel felt nothing. No grief, no relief, nothing. But the lawyer's follow-up call changed everything. Richard had left the entire estate to Samuel. The Victorian mansion, the land, the investments, everything. There was one condition. Samuel had to spend one night in the house before he could claim the inheritance. And there was a letter. Read this before you enter, the lawyer said. Your father insisted. Samuel drove to Massachusetts on a gray October afternoon. The estate looked exactly as he remembered, imposing, Gothic, surrounded by dead trees and overgrown gardens. It had always felt wrong to him, even as a child. Too cold, too dark. Like the house itself was unhappy. He sat in his car and opened his father's letter. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. Samuel, if you're reading this, I'm dead. And you're about to make the biggest mistake of your life by entering this house. Don't go into the cellar. I'm begging you. Don't go into the cellar. For your sake. For your children's sake. Walk away from this inheritance. Let the house rot. Let the curse die with me. Your father. Samuel read it 3 times. A curse. His father believed in a curse. The man who'd mocked religion, who dismissed anything spiritual as weakness, believed in a curse. Samuel folded the letter and got out of the car. He had to see. The house was exactly as he remembered. Dark wood, high ceilings, portraits of stern ancestors lining the walls. Samuel walked through the rooms, memories flooding back. His mother leaving when he was 8, never looking back. His father's rage, the isolation, the fear. He'd spent his childhood terrified of this house. Now it just felt sad. Empty. He found his father's journal in the study, sitting on the desk like it had been left for him. Samuel opened it. The entries went back years. The early ones were normal. Business dealings, social events, complaints about politics. But the later entries changed. They became erratic, paranoid. She's back again. I can hear her in the walls. She wants what I owe. What we all owe. Tried to leave the house today. Made it to the car. Couldn't start the engine. She won't let me leave. I see her in every mirror, every reflection. She's waiting. She's always waiting. Samuel flipped to the last entry, dated 3 days before his father's death. I thought I could escape it. I thought if I stayed upstairs, if I never went down there, she couldn't reach me. I was wrong. The debt comes due. It always comes due. Every generation, one of us pays. My father paid. Now I pay. Samuel will be next, unless he's smart enough to walk away. Samuel closed the journal. This was insane. His father had clearly lost his mind in his final years, alone in this house, creating paranoid delusions. But something made Samuel uncomfortable. The mention of his grandfather. Samuel's grandfather, Thomas Ashford, had died when Samuel was a baby. The family never talked about how, just that he'd died in the house. Samuel had always assumed it was natural causes, old age. But what came next made him question everything. He found a box of old photographs in the study closet. Most were normal family photos from the early 1900s. But at the bottom, he found a newspaper clipping from 1892. The headline read, "Business Partners' Mysterious Death Sparks Investigation." The article detailed the death of a man named Jonathan Wells, who had died in a supposed accident at a construction site. His business partner, Samuel's great-great-grandfather, Nathaniel Ashford, inherited the entire company and made a fortune. But Jonathan's daughter, a woman named Catherine Wells, had publicly accused Nathaniel of murder. She claimed he'd sabotaged the equipment, caused the accident, and stolen her father's share of the business. No charges were ever filed. Nathaniel's wealth bought silence. But Catherine had done something else. She'd gone to a woman known in the area as a witch, and she'd placed a curse on the Ashford family. The newspaper didn't detail the curse, but a handwritten note tucked behind the clipping did. Samuel recognized his grandfather's handwriting. The curse is real. Every generation, one male heir pays the debt. My father died screaming in the cellar at age 52. I'm 51 now. I know I'm next. The woman in the mirror, Catherine Wells, she appears when the time is near. She shows you the truth, shows you what Nathaniel did. Then she takes you. I've seen her twice this month. I don't have long. Richard, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. You'll be next. There's no escape. The only way to break it is to confess publicly what Nathaniel did and return the stolen fortune to Catherine's descendants. But no Ashford has ever been brave enough. Pride runs too deep. So we die, one by one, paying for our grandfather's sin. Samuel felt cold. This couldn't be real. Curses weren't real. But his great-great-grandfather had died in the house. His grandfather had died in the house. His father had died in the house. All relatively young, all alone. All in circumstances that were never fully explained. Samuel knew what he should do. Walk away. Drive back to Vermont. Forget the inheritance. Let the curse die. But he couldn't. Not without seeing. Not without knowing. Against every instinct screaming at him to leave, Samuel walked to the cellar door. It was locked. He found the key in his father's desk drawer, attached to a note. Don't. Samuel unlocked the door. The air that rushed up smelled of earth and decay. The stairs descended into darkness. He found a light switch. Dim bulbs flickered to life, revealing stone walls and a dirt floor. The cellar was mostly empty except for an old shrine in the corner. Candles, offerings, photographs. His father had built this. Desperate prayers to something he hoped would listen. And in the center of the shrine was a mirror. Old, ornate, cracked. Samuel walked toward it slowly. His reflection appeared, normal at first. But then the glass began to ripple like water. The reflection changed, and she appeared beside him. Catherine Wells. Young. Beautiful. Furious. She wore a dress from the 1890s, dark fabric stained with dirt. Her eyes burned with an intensity that made Samuel's breath catch. She spoke, her voice echoing in his mind rather than his ears. Another Ashford. Another thief's descendant. Your great-great-grandfather murdered my father. Pushed him from scaffolding and made it look like an accident. Stole his life's work, stole his fortune, left my mother and me with nothing. We starved. My mother died begging in the streets. I was 14 years old, watching her waste away because a man wanted money more than he valued life. So I made a promise. Every generation would pay. One son, one life, until the debt is settled. Samuel tried to step back, but his feet wouldn't move. Catherine continued, her voice growing colder. Your great-great-grandfather died first. Heart attack in this cellar while counting his stolen gold. Your great-grandfather drowned in 2 inches of water on this floor. Impossible, the doctor said. But I was there, holding him down. Your grandfather hanged himself with a rope he didn't bring. And your father? He died of fear, pure terror. His heart gave out while staring into this mirror, seeing what I showed him. Samuel's voice finally worked. What did you show him? Catherine smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Samuel had ever seen. The truth. Would you like to see? The mirror changed. Images flooded through. His great-great-grandfather, Nathaniel, arguing with Jonathan Wells on the scaffolding. A shove. Jonathan falling, screaming, hitting the ground. Nathaniel calmly walking away. Then the theft. Documents forged. Money transferred. Catherine and her mother evicted from their home. The mother growing thin, sick, dying in a charity hospital. Catherine, 14, standing at her mother's grave, alone. Then Catherine walking to a small house on the edge of town. A woman with white hair and strange eyes. The curse being spoken. Words in a language Samuel didn't understand, but somehow felt in his bones. And then the deaths. Each Ashford heir, each one taken in this cellar. Each one given the same choice Catherine was about to offer Samuel. You can break this, Catherine said. Confess what Nathaniel did. Publicly, expose the truth. Return the stolen fortune to my descendants. I had a younger brother who survived. His line continues. Do this, and I'll release your family. You'll live. Your children will live. The curse ends. Samuel's mind raced. And if I don't? Catherine's eyes darkened. Then you die tonight. And someday, your son will stand here too. And his son after that. The curse continues until an Ashford finds the courage to choose justice over pride. Samuel looked at the mirror, saw himself, saw the weight of 4 generations of guilt pressing down on him. He thought of his own children, his daughter, his son. He thought of his father dying alone in this house, too proud to confess, too proud to break the curse. He thought of what kind of man he wanted to be. "I'll do it," Samuel said. "I'll confess. I'll return the money. Just tell me how." Catherine's expression changed. The rage softened. For the first time, she looked less like a vengeful spirit and more like the 14-year-old girl who'd lost everything. "Tomorrow. Public record. Document everything. Contact my brother's descendants. I'll give you their names. Return what was taken. Every cent. And Samuel?" She stepped closer to the mirror's surface. "Thank you for having the courage your ancestors didn't." The mirror went dark. Samuel stumbled backward. The cellar suddenly felt warmer, lighter. He climbed the stairs on shaking legs and left the house. He didn't sleep there that night. He drove to a hotel and spent hours researching. Found Catherine's brother's line. Found descendants living in Boston. Found lawyers who could help him draft the confession. Found financial advisors who could handle the restitution. 3 weeks later, Samuel held a press conference. He told the truth, all of it. The murder, the theft, the cover-up, the curse. The media had a field day. The Ashford name was destroyed. But the Wells descendants received $8.7 million in restitution, the original sum plus interest calculated over 132 years. Samuel kept enough to live modestly, sold the estate, donated the remaining fortune to charities in Catherine's mother's name. And the curse? It broke. Samuel knows because he went back to the house one last time before the sale finalized. Went down to the cellar, stood in front of the mirror, saw only his reflection. Catherine was gone. But sometimes, late at night, Samuel sees her anyway. In his bathroom mirror, in store windows, in the rearview mirror of his car. Not angry anymore. Just watching. Making sure he keeps his word. Making sure he doesn't fall back into the Ashford pattern of lies and greed. And Samuel is fine with that, because he knows the truth now. Some debts are passed down through blood, some sins echo through generations, and sometimes the only way to break a cycle is to be the one brave enough to admit the truth, no matter the cost. Samuel Ashford destroyed his family name to save his soul, and he'd do it again without hesitation. Because living free from a curse is worth more than any inheritance money can buy.